When the letter arrived, I almost didn't open it. It sat on my kitchen table for hours, sealed in a cream-colored envelope with golden edges, the kind used for weddings or graduations. My hands trembled when I finally tore it open, and I immediately recognized the handwriting. Perfect, elegant strokes that didn't belong to him but to her. His fiancée. Inside was the invitation. My ex-husband was getting married. The words blurred before my eyes. Part of me wanted to laugh at the irony. Years ago, I had walked down an aisle with him, wearing a dress and carrying dreams that never survived. Now he was doing it all over again. This time with a woman who had made it very clear she despised me and barely tolerated my daughter. I told myself I wouldn't go. Why should I? He had moved on, and I had built a life for myself and for our little girl. But when my daughter saw the invitation, her face lit up in a way that broke me. "Mom," she whispered, "does this mean I'll get to see Daddy in a suit again? Like in the old pictures?" Her hope was pure, innocent. She didn't remember the fights, the betrayal, the late nights I spent crying into my pillow. To her, he was still her dad, the man who used to carry her on his shoulders and sing silly songs. She wanted to be there. And if she wanted it, I couldn't say no. I smiled, though my chest ached. "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "We'll go." That night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone at the table with the invitation. A part of me wondered if it was a trap, if she wanted me there just to humiliate me. But then I shook my head. No. This day was not about me. It was about my daughter. I had to be strong for her. Even if walking into that hall would mean stepping into my past, I promised myself I wouldn't let it show. It's just one day, I told myself. Just one wedding. But deep down, a knot formed in my stomach, whispering that it would be anything but ordinary. The morning of the wedding felt unreal. I woke up early, even before the alarm rang, and for a long time I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. 1,000 excuses circled in my head. Fake a fever, pretend the car broke down, say we missed the ceremony. But when I peeked into my daughter's room, I saw her carefully brushing her hair in front of the mirror, humming softly. She had laid out her favorite dress the night before, the pale blue one with the ribbon at the waist. Her shoes were polished, and she had even placed a little flower clip on her pillow. "Do I look okay, Mom?" she asked when she noticed me watching. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of nerves and excitement. My throat tightened. I wanted to tell her she looked perfect, not just okay, but the words stuck. All I managed was a smile. "You look beautiful." The drive to the venue was quiet, the silence broken only by the sound of her small voice rehearsing what she might say if someone asked her about school or her hobbies. She was so hopeful, so eager to be accepted, and I hated myself for already knowing how cruel some people could be. The venue itself was stunning, a grand hall with marble pillars, crystal chandeliers, and flowers everywhere. I had seen it once before in a magazine, the kind of place brides dreamed about. My stomach churned as soon as we stepped inside. The air was filled with laughter and perfume, but the moment people noticed us, it shifted. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's her, right?" someone murmured. "Yes, the ex-wife. And the daughter." I felt my daughter's hand slip into mine. She held on tightly, but I could feel her fingers trembling. I squeezed back, forcing a smile, trying to shield her from the curious stares. And then I saw her, the bride. She was standing near the entrance, radiant in her gown, her hair styled in perfect curls. Her smile widened when she spotted us, but it wasn't warmth, it was satisfaction, almost like she had been waiting for this moment. She leaned closer to one of her bridesmaids and whispered something. They both giggled behind manicured hands. I knew that laugh. I'd heard it before at school meetings, at family events. The kind of laugh that wasn't just about amusement, but about power, about reminding someone of their place. My daughter noticed too. Her shoulders sank, and she dropped her gaze to the floor. "Sweetheart," I whispered, bending down slightly, "don't let them see you scared. You belong here just as much as anyone else." She nodded, though I could tell she wasn't convinced. The ceremony began. music filling the hall as the bride walked down the aisle. My ex-husband stood at the altar, looking nervous but proud. For a moment, I was transported back years ago to my own wedding day with him. The same music, the same smile on his face, the same promises. Only this time, I wasn't the one in the dress. I swallowed the lump in my throat and focused on my daughter. This day wasn't about me or the memories clawing their way back. It was about her, about making sure she walked through this with her head held high. Still, as the vows were exchanged and the guests cheered, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into something far more dangerous than a simple wedding. It wasn't just a celebration, it was a stage. And my daughter and I had just been cast as unwilling characters in someone else's play. The reception hall shimmered with golden lights, each chandelier throwing glitter across the tables. Waiters moved swiftly, carrying trays of champagne, while the guests filled the air with clinking glasses and loud conversation. My daughter sat beside me, small and quiet in her blue dress, her fork tracing circles on her plate of untouched food. I kept glancing at her, trying to force myself to breathe. She deserved a night where she could feel like part of something, not like an outsider. But the stares hadn't stopped. Some relatives smiled politely, but others openly ignored us, as though we were shadows haunting the edges of this perfect evening. And then came the moment I dreaded. The toasts. One by one, people stood. His best man delivered a funny story about college days. Laughter rippled across the hall. His sister gave a heartfelt speech, her voice trembling with happy tears. And then, the bride rose to her feet. She looked angelic in her gown, a champagne flute in her hand that caught the light like a crystal wand. She cleared her throat, and the hall fell silent. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," she began, her voice sugar-sweet, dripping with charm. "It means so much to celebrate with the people who matter most." Her gaze drifted across the crowd before pausing deliberately on us. My stomach tightened. "I feel blessed," she continued, "to be standing here, starting a new chapter with the man I love. Together, we'll build a complete family, a true home, and one day we'll raise children of our own." The words stung like a slap. But she wasn't finished. She tilted her head, her smile sharp as glass. "Of course, stepchildren are, well, like guests at the table. They're here for a time, but not forever." The hall erupted in chuckles, nervous and uncertain, but enough to make my daughter shrink in her chair. Her cheeks flushed scarlet, her hands twisted in her lap. My own blood boiled. I wanted to stand, to shout, to throw my glass across the room. But I didn't. I stayed frozen, my hand gripping the table so hard my nails dug into the wood. My daughter looked at me, her eyes wide and wounded. And in that moment, I realized silence would hurt her more than anything the bride had said. But before I could move, she pushed her chair back with a scrape that echoed through the hall. My daughter stood up. She was small, fragile even, yet her presence suddenly filled the entire hall. Conversations died instantly. The clinking of cutlery stopped. Even the band seemed to falter mid-note. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at the bride. She looked at the entire room, her chin trembling, her fists clenched. "That's not true," she said, her voice clear though it quivered at the edges. "I'm not a guest. I'm his daughter. His only daughter." The words cut through the air sharper than broken glass. Silence fell. The bride froze, her champagne flute halfway to her lips. My ex-husband's face went pale, his jaw slack. Gasps spread among the guests, but nobody dared to interrupt. My daughter took a breath, her shoulders shaking. "You may be wearing a white dress today," she continued louder now, "but that doesn't make you my mother. And it doesn't make me less of his family. I belong here." The courage in her voice made my chest ache. She was trembling, yes, but she stood tall, refusing to be invisible. The bride's face flushed, red creeping up her neck, but she forced a laugh. "Oh, sweetheart, I was only joking. Everyone knows I didn't mean it like that." But the guests weren't laughing anymore. The same people who chuckled a moment ago now looked uncomfortable, ashamed. A murmur ran through the hall, like a wave gathering strength. My ex-husband finally rose from his chair, his eyes darting between his daughter and his bride. He opened his mouth, but no words came. For once, the man who always had an answer seemed speechless. And then, from the back of the hall, someone began to clap. Just a single pair of hands at first, steady and deliberate. Then another joined, and another, until the sound grew into thunder. The applause wasn't for the bride. It wasn't for the groom. It was for my daughter. She blinked, her eyes wide with surprise, and then a small, hesitant smile broke across her face. I felt my own tears rising, pride swelling inside me so fiercely it nearly crushed my chest. The bride sat down slowly, her knuckles white around the stem of her glass. She looked like she had been struck. My ex-husband turned toward his daughter, his lips parting, but before he could speak, the clapping grew even louder, drowning him out. In that moment, I knew the balance in the room had shifted. My daughter hadn't just defended herself, she had taken control of the story, silencing the cruelty with truth. And I realized, no matter what anyone thought of me, she would never again let herself be treated as less than she was. The applause finally ebbed, leaving the hall hushed and watchful, as if the room itself was holding its breath. My daughter's shoulders were still trembling, but she didn't sit down. She stood there with her small chin lifted, like a lighthouse in a storm. I rose too, not to shield her, but to stand with her. My ex-husband took a tentative step forward. "Sweetheart," he said, voice rough, "you will always be my daughter. That will never change." He looked at me then, and for a flicker of a second the old kindness returned to his face, the one I had married for. And I should have made that clearer, to everyone. The bride's smile shattered. "What are you doing?" she whispered, but the microphone caught it, scattering the words across the room. She stood abruptly, chair scraping. "We talked about this. Boundaries. My home. Our home," he corrected softly, but there was steel beneath it. "Which includes my daughter." Murmurs stirred again. At the far table, his aunt who'd ignored us earlier pressed a napkin to her eyes. A groomsman shifted uncomfortably. Even the band members watched with their hands poised over their instruments, caught in the spell of a moment bigger than music. The bride turned to the guests, cheeks blazing. "I was joking," she said, too brightly. "Everyone is so sensitive." She laughed, brittle and tinny. "Kids, you know. They don't understand adult humor." My daughter met her gaze. "I understand exactly," she said. "And I don't want you to call me a guest again." I felt a change move through the room, a quiet current of recognition. People were not only seeing my child, they were hearing her. That made all the difference. I spoke then, my voice surprisingly calm. "We came to celebrate. We didn't come to fight. But if being here means pretending my child is temporary, we'll leave." I placed a hand on my daughter's shoulder. "We love him. We're not here to compete with you. We are here because family doesn't become less, to make room for more. It grows." For the first time, the bride faltered. Not from embarrassment. Something else. Fear. She looked at the crowd, at the faces that had once adored her sparkle and now looked for substance. She glanced at my ex-husband and saw the one thing that had never bent for her, his love for his child. He lifted the microphone. "I'm sorry," he said, turning to my daughter, "for not preparing better, for not setting the tone." He swallowed. "If anyone in this room can't welcome my daughter, they don't have to stay. But she does." The applause returned, not thunderous this time, but warm, communal. The kind that wraps around a person like a coat. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath since we walked in. The bride lowered her glass. She didn't speak. And for the first time since we arrived, I believed we might just make it through the night without breaking. Dinner resumed in a softened hush, as if the soundboard of the evening had been turned down. The staff moved almost tenderly, setting plates, refilling water, steering around the fragile center of the room where something sacred had just been named. I cut my chicken and barely tasted it. My daughter picked at her bread roll and then, with a sigh of a soldier after battle, actually smiled. "Mom," she whispered. "Yes. I think I did okay." I touched her cheek. "You were remarkable." A woman in a pale green dress approached our table. His aunt, the one who'd been crying. "I owe you both an apology," she said, eyes wet. "I should have greeted you properly. I let myself be pulled into sides." She turned to my daughter. "May I give you a hug?" My daughter nodded. The woman hugged her like something precious that had been misplaced for years and just found in a linen closet. When she pulled back, she slipped a small velvet pouch into my daughter's hand. "Your grandmother's bracelet. It's yours if you want it." My throat burned. "Thank you," I managed, wondering how many silences had kept this family poorer than it ever needed to be. Then the band found a gentle rhythm, and the first dance began. The bride and groom stepped onto the floor. 100 eyes followed them, but I couldn't read the bride's expression. It wasn't triumph anymore. It wasn't even anger. It was the expression of a person who had counted on the room to tilt for her, and discovered the floor was level. After a minute, my ex-husband paused. He whispered something to the bride, then walked to our table. The crowd parted as if the air asked it to. He knelt beside our daughter. "May I have this dance?" Her eyes sparkled. She glanced at me. I nodded. He led her to the floor, hands careful and proud. The band, as if guided by an old kindness, shifted into the waltz he used to hum when she was a toddler. I watched them turn, watched the way she laughed when he accidentally stepped on his own shoe, watched the room remember how to be gentle. The bride remained where she was, alone in a circle of light meant for two. After a moment, she returned to her table. She didn't cry. She didn't storm out. She watched. And that, perhaps, was its own kind of reckoning. When the song ended, my ex-husband kissed our daughter's forehead and walked us back. He looked at me as if he wanted to say many things, but chose just one. "Thank you for coming. You needed to see her," I said. "Not just as a guest, but as the center of your own story." He nodded, humbled in a way I had not seen since the early days of our marriage. The kind of humility that makes promises possible and keeps hands from closing into fists. Then dessert arrived, and laughter cautiously grew again. The night did not return to what it had been. It became better than it planned to be. We left before midnight, slipping out while the band packed cables and the last of the champagne lost its bubbles. The parking lot smelled like cut grass and cooling engines. Crickets stitched the darkness together. My daughter held the velvet pouch to her chest, the bracelet inside ticking softly like a tiny clock. "Mom," she said as we reached the car. "Do you think she hates me?" I unlocked the door and knelt so we were eye to eye. "I think she doesn't know you yet. And people fear what they don't know." I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "But today you showed everyone who you are." We drove in a quiet more peaceful than the silence of the morning. Streetlights passed over us like slow blessings. At a red light, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Thank you for standing up for her. I should have done it sooner. I didn't answer. Not yet. Some replies require more than words. They require time and changed behavior. At home, I made cocoa we were too wired to drink. We sat on the couch with our legs beneath the same blanket. My daughter opened the pouch and lifted the bracelet into the lamplight. Delicate gold links, a tiny charm shaped like a leaf. It had the softness of something handled by careful hands through many winters. "Will you wear it to school?" I asked. She shook her head. "No," she said. "I'll wear it when I need to remember." Remember what? That I belong. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the warm scent of her hair. Outside, a siren wailed far away and then dissolved into the city's endless hush. I thought of the bride, of how easy it is to confuse perfection with power, and cruelty with control. I thought of my ex-husband, how fatherhood can atrophy if you stop using the muscle, and how quickly it can spring back to life with one necessary choice. I thought of myself, how many rooms I had walked into small, and how, tonight, my daughter taught me to take up my own space again. Before bed, I texted back, she doesn't need more speeches. She needs steadiness. Start there. A moment later, I will. When I turned off the lights, the apartment felt different, as if the walls had shifted half an inch to make more room. My daughter slept with the bracelet beneath her pillow. I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe, the kind of watching that mothers do when they are measuring miracles. Tomorrow, gossip would travel. Some people would edit the story to protect their comfort. Others would hold on to the truth like a lantern. But it didn't matter. The point of tonight wasn't punishment. It was naming. It was belonging. I climbed into bed and let the darkness settle. In the quiet, I heard only the soft, steady rhythm of our house remembering us. And I realized something simple and seismic. The story I thought we were revisiting had ended long ago. Tonight, we had begun another, one where my daughter's voice was not the twist, but the theme, where she would never again be treated as an extra in a life she helped write. And as sleep found me, I held one final thought like a blessing on my tongue. Families don't shrink to fit new loves. They grow.